we're going to increase the amount of lithium that we kick out by a factor of 10 in 8 years? I don't think so. And it's worse than it sounds, because we're losing a lot of the material production and a lot of the processing capacity. Russia is a top 3 producer of things on this list, like zinc and copper and nickel. And then China is in a top 3 position for the processing for all of them, and typically number 1 for all of them.
The future of electric vehicle adoption may be in danger, and it's not just because of political deadlocks. The reality is that our global supply chain may be the bottleneck that kills the industry, but not for the reasons that you may think. Does that perhaps send a chill down your Tesla bag-holding spine? Well, our juicy Peter Zeihan interview clip may not help you sleep any better, but stick around until the end to hear his doubts on the adoption of electric vehicles, and stick around until after that and you'll get to hear the opposing arguments of both Cathie Wood and Elon Musk himself. To begin with, EVs have been gaining popularity in recent years due to a number of factors. One of the main reasons is the growing concern over the impact of climate change and the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. As people become more aware of the environmental impact of traditional gasoline-powered vehicles, they are increasingly turning to EVs as a cleaner and more sustainable alternative. Another factor contributing to the rise in the popularity of EVs is advances in technology. In recent years, battery technology has improved significantly, making it possible for EVs to travel farther on a single charge and making them more affordable for consumers. The political and corporate emphasis on the adoption of EVs has also played a significant role in their growing popularity. Many governments around the world have introduced incentives and policies to encourage the adoption of EVs, such as tax credits, rebates, and regulations requiring automakers to produce more EVs. For example, in the United States, the federal government offers a tax credit of up to $7,500 for the purchase of an EV, while in California, the state offers additional incentives to encourage the adoption of EVs. On the corporate side, many automakers have recognized the growing demand for EVs and have invested heavily in their development and production. Companies such as Tesla, Nissan, and General Motors have been at the forefront of the EV revolution, producing some of the most popular and innovative EV models on the market. Overall, the rise in popularity of EVs and the political and corporate emphasis on their adoption can be attributed to a combination of factors, including environmental concerns, technological advances, and governmental and corporate incentives. As we move forward, it's likely that we will continue to see a shift towards electric vehicles as we strive towards a more sustainable future. Now, there are always other forces that sway progress. Let's talk about the political headwinds and tailwinds that affect the adoption of electric vehicles. On one hand, there are plenty of forces pushing for greater EV adoption. Politicians and regulators and environmentalists all see electric vehicles as a key tool for fighting climate change and reducing emissions. Plus, EVs have become more affordable and practical in recent years, which is a major tailwind in their favor. But of course, there are always political headwinds that threaten to slow down the growth of the EV market. Some folks are skeptical of the technology and worry about issues like range anxiety, charging infrastructure, and battery life. Others are more concerned about the economic impacts of EV adoption, like job losses in the oil and gas industry. Then there are the more, shall we say, colorful political headwinds that EV advocates have to contend with. I'm talking about the conspiracy theories and misinformation campaigns that have been circulating online, claiming that EVs are actually worse for the environment than gas-powered cars. You might have even heard of some of these wild claims, like that EV batteries are made with child labor or that they're powered by coal-fired power plants. Needless to say, these arguments don't hold up to scrutiny, but they still manage to sow doubt and confusion in the minds of some consumers. At the end of the day, though, the tailwinds seem to be winning out. EV adoption is on the rise, and more people are realizing the benefits of electric cars. So, while there may be some political headwinds blowing, it seems like the future of transportation is going electric. And hey, if that means we get to drive around in quiet, emission-free cars while sticking it to big oil, I'd say that's a pretty sweet tailwind indeed. And of course, any concept that seems quite this great can never be as good as it seems, right? And I want to share with you this clip from our good friend of the channel, Peter Zeihan, and his latest interview. He joined co-hosts Scott Crockett and Brittany Brander to talk about plenty of global issues and focused especially on the adoption of electric vehicles. What he said may very well be an accurate description of the nail in the coffin for electric vehicle adoption that no one saw coming. So Hear my boy out.
A lithium-based electric vehicle absorbs a huge amount of energy in its creation, and most of the lithium processing, most of the aluminum processing, most of the silicon processing, and that's what's in the frames, is all done in China, and it's all done with soft coal. So the carbon footprint for these things is not being factored into most people's carbon assessments when you're determining where the break-even price is in terms of carbon. If you do that, there are any place in the world that runs on a mix that is more than 70% fossil fuel, which is the vast majority, you're talking at a break-even time that approaches a decade, if not more. And that's for light vehicles. You get into heavies, it extends it out considerably. Now, there aren't a lot of heavy vehicles, so take that for what it is. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, if you want to electrify transport in North America, you need to double the size of the grid. That would obviously be a challenge.
Double the size.
Yeah, so what we've done in the last 150 years, double that in the next 7.
Right.
Okay.
Which, especially in a place like Canada, where it takes us a very long time to build any sort of major project.
Not just you. So both of these things are things that politically you can ignore if you want to, and you can throw enough money at it to make it happen. It doesn't make them impossible, it just makes them perhaps not the best idea. But there is something out there that makes it impossible. If you want to double the size of the grid, if you want to electrify transport, and if you want to do it on a schedule that people say we want to achieve by 2030, that means we need 3 times as much copper, 4 times as much chromium, 4 times as much aluminum, 10 times as much nickel, 18 times as much graphite. Never in human history have we ever doubled our production of any industrial material in a 10-year period, ever. And we're going to do this for 14 materials now.
Simultaneously.
Right. And we're losing Russian output, and the Russians are a top 4 producer for about half of this stuff. And we're going to lose the processing capacity in China. So this cannot happen with today's technology. It just can't. This stuff isn't there. Does that mean we will walk away from it completely? Not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we're going to have to make choices about where we want to apply these materials and where we can get the biggest bang for our buck. Now, if this was done purely looking at economics and carbon, I would put wind turbines throughout the Great Plains, including in Alberta. I would put solar in the American Southwest, roughly from central Texas and the Austin-San Antonio corridor, all the way to Los Angeles. Yeah. And then I would spend most of the money and most of the resources that we have on transmission from those zones to the places that don't. And that would probably gobble up almost all of the material, or like our quote share of global materials. Now, the materials are not available globally. So we're going to be able to do more in the Western Hemisphere than the Eastern, but we also have better wind and solar frontage in the Western Hemisphere than the Eastern. But putting up solar panels, the only place in the world that it's dumber to put solar panels up than Toronto is Berlin. And so these are the 2 capitals that are pushing this the hardest. It's just absolutely asinine. One of the fun things that we're seeing in the green community right now is a conversation which is degrading into a debate, which is degrading into a knife fight between the Greens of California and the Greens of Germany. Because the 2 of them have very similar policies when it comes to encouraging renewables. The Californians have spent 1/3 as much as the Germans and are getting 5 times the power because the sun doesn't shine in Germany.
Yes.
But it does in California.
Anybody who's been to either of those places would know that instantly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And no, this is a conversation they should have had 15 years ago. Basic geography and what it means for technology. They're having it now. It's overdue, but I'm glad they're having it. And if you start playing the results of that conversation against this materials shortage we're coming across, the Greens are going to be the ones at the lead of deciding where this works and where it doesn't. And that is absolutely the community we want making this decision. We're not there yet, but we are rapidly moving in the right direction. EVs don't make the cut. You would have to have a green system to manufacture them, and you would have to power them with green, and it would have to be in a society where everyone can charge their cars at the day, which means they're all working night shift.
Right.
I am unaware of a metro where that exists. So EVs just don't work in a constrained environment. So you focus on generation where generation does well, and then you use transmission to get it to the next tier of cities beyond that zone. That's still a really good start.
I won't lie, this picture sounds pretty bleak to me, at least in terms of electric vehicle adoption. It would take a massive amount of coordination and effort nationally and globally to chase this dream of no emissions. As we do, we're gonna give you another perspective from someone who is possibly more bullish than anyone else on the future of electric vehicles. Kathy Wood, another friend of the channel. Her fund, ARK Invest, has been throwing insane amounts of money at electric vehicle producers like Tesla. And maybe there is a bright future for EVs. Just ask Kathy. Just ask Kathy. Let's see what Kathy apparently has to say.
We think with supply chain issues and with the food and energy prices caused by this shock, this Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that once again, innovation is going to help solve these problems. Electric vehicles, there's an accelerated consumer preference shift towards electric vehicles, like Tesla, because of oil prices. And we think there's no stopping that trend now. Tesla, as I mentioned, is a solution to the problem. It's very interesting. If you look at gasoline demand this summer in the United States, it dropped below COVID levels, the worst of COVID, and it dropped to levels that we have not seen since 1997. That's real demand destruction, and it couldn't have happened, we do not believe, without electric vehicles at the margin taking huge share from traditional automobiles. So if we had to be concerned about an industry, it would be the traditional auto industry. We think that gas-powered vehicles are going to be obsolete within the next 5 to 10 years, and the traditional auto industry has to figure out a way to migrate into electric vehicles and into the next big phase, which we think Tesla is leading.
And to tack on just a little bit more insider input, let's also listen to what an actual electric vehicle maker has to say about the outlook of his company. I guess you can imagine who this might be. Nikola Tesla, of course.
I'm confident that we will be able to sell all the cars we can make. I mean, currently, the lead time for ordering a Tesla is ridiculously long. So our issue is not demand, it is production. We're actually probably going to limit or just stop taking orders for anything beyond a certain period of time, because some of the timing is like a year away. Basically, I think zero about demand generation and a lot about production and engineering and supply chain. Just last night, I basically got no sleep. I was literally working all night, just Sunday through Monday. I think the future of Tesla is extremely strong. So Tesla has no debt. It has a lot of cash, and there's a sort of a short-term hiccup with the COVID restrictions in Shanghai. To the best of my knowledge, the future of Tesla is incredibly bright, and I think we will throw off a tremendous amount of free cash flow.
As colorful a picture that Kathy and Elon paint, the gloomy question is that of whether global resources can actually sustain the progression of electric vehicles into the main mode of transportation. You see, electric vehicles rely on a variety of rare and exotic materials like lithium, cobalt, and nickel to power their batteries, and if there's a shortage of any of these materials, it could spell trouble for EV production and adoption. Now, you might be thinking, surely there can't be a shortage of materials in the modern age of global trade and advanced technology, and to that I gotta say, you might be underestimating the power of good old-fashioned supply and demand. As the demand for electric vehicles continues to rise, so too does the demand for the materials needed to make them. And as we've seen time and time again, when demand outstrips supply, prices tend to go up. In some cases, the prices of these materials has already skyrocketed, which could put a serious dent in the bottom line for EV manufacturers. But it's not just about money, which is a surprise, I know, but it's a shocker to me too. But actually, a shortage of key materials could also lead to delays in EV production and even shortages of finished vehicles, and that, my friends, could spell disaster for the future of electric transportation. So what's the solution? Well, some companies are already working on developing new battery technologies that use less of these rare materials or even eliminate them altogether. But until those technologies become mainstream, we may need to buckle up and brace for the occasional bump in the road. After all, every revolution has its hiccups, right? If you thought Peter Zeihan's input on this topic was as insightful as we did, you should check out our recent video on his breakdown of why AI technology may be creating a massive bubble that the economy isn't prepared for. But thanks for tuning back into Profit Protection, guys. Are you still going to invest in electric vehicle companies? Let us know in the comments below, and until next time, protect your profits. Yes, that's our new motto. All right, see ya.